I lived in fear. I was one of those people you had heard so much about in the news, one of those 11.7 million undocumented immigrants. We were actually living in the shadows. And when I would admit this status to my friends, when I would admit this experience that I had living in the shadows for the majority of my life, 16 years actually, they were surprised about something that caught me off guard. When I asked them why they were so surprised about this experience I had, they looked at me and they said, "You're not Mexican." And I wanted to take that point just for a second and just kind of say the immigrant struggle isn't something that's just south of the border of the United States. The immigrant struggle is for every family that wants to come here, pursue their American dream from wherever they come from. And in fact, my family came here when I was very young from the United Kingdom. I was only 2 years old. And even though we came here legally, my family had accidentally overstayed our visas, which is what resulted in our illegal status. We had become undocumented. And it took us 16 years to recover legal status, to get our green cards. And the reason that it took so long was because of how complicated and backlogged the immigration system really is in the United States. In fact, if someone applied today for family-based immigration the same way that my family did, they would find out that the government is still processing those applications from 1998. So the government is actually a decade and a half behind in processing the applications of people exactly like me want to become citizens of this country. And that's not even true, I misspoke. Want to even get green cards. It takes an additional 5 years after that to become a citizen. And in fact, I won't become a citizen until later this year. But that's the end of the story. Let me get to everything else that happened up to that. So for 16 years, we lived in fear. Fear that at any time we could have gotten detained and deported. Fear that while my dad drove me to school every day, his words of advice for that day, as he always did, would be cut out by sounds of police sirens. They would be pulled over and asked about our status. Fear that one day I could come home and my parents wouldn't be there because they hadn't been detained. And that was just from my perspective. Fears that I couldn't go to college or get a driver's license, follow my friends in getting scholarships and financial aid. Imagine the fear that my parents had every day, worrying more than just whether I was happy and healthy and getting a quality education and that they were doing the best they could while working, raising my sister and myself. They had bigger worries about whether I would even return home, whether I would find myself in the wrong place at the wrong time and find myself in a deportation proceeding. Those were the kind of experiences, the shadows that we lived in. It was a nightmare, except it was real. And it did become real for me until one very specific experience in high school. I'd heard about an institution called Francis Tuttle. It's a technology institute, and I was so excited to get to go and spend half the day of my high school day there to work on something outside of normal curriculum, to work on a new skill. I'd heard about a cybersecurity program, so I went there to enroll, and I was really excited. I filled out the paperwork, asked about random information about me, my name, my address, other biographical information, my race, ethnicity, things like that. And then I came across two questions and didn't think anything of them. My social security number and my my country of origin. And I lied. Made up a social. Of course I'm a citizen. Yeah, sure. They're not gonna check anything. No one's gonna know the difference. And as the instructor was walking around the classroom in the cybersecurity program, she was telling us what to do, how to fill out the paperwork correctly. And she said two words that made me freeze immediately. Background check. That wasn't just regular paperwork to be scanned over and filed away. They were gonna take the information on those pieces of paper and run all the information. And it was then I realized that my status could actually be used against me and my family. That there was a way that this situation could be used against us and we could be deported. And I also realized that now this shadow could actually hold me back. I may not be able to capitalize on the same educational opportunities that my friends could. So in that moment, I made a decision. I checked the paperwork, I folded it discreetly, shoved it in my pockets, and excused myself to go to the bathroom. I never came back. And that was the way that we lived for so long. And it wasn't until a couple weeks after my 18th birthday that we finally got our green cards in the mail. And I cannot even articulate fairly what a wave of relief it is to receive those dream cards, if you will, in the mail. Because it meant that we didn't have to live in fear anymore. We were outside of the shadows. We were in the light. We could live like regular people. We can now walk around in public and drive without fear of being randomly questioned about our status. I could now do what all my friends were doing. I could apply for a real job. I could apply to go to college with options of financial aid. I could get a driver's license. I felt normal, like a whole person. I was going through all the paperwork, really excited, going through the green cards and everything, and I counted 3 green cards. One from each of my parents, and one for me. But I have a sister. And I learned in that moment that she wasn't going to be sharing that happiness with us, because she had turned 21 before that day came. And because of that, the government considered my sister an adult and kicked her out of her application for his permanent residence. And she would have to start over on her own. So my relief turned to paranoia again for my sister now. But that didn't stop her. She was already enrolled at OU, getting her bachelor's in microbiology. And she has such a deep passion for public health and disease. She wasn't going to let anything stop her. So she kept going and she graduated. And she got her bachelor's in microbiology here. But now she encountered a new nightmare. She got to witness the opportunities that come with the experiences of getting a college degree and having these new skills, getting to see all these new options that become available to people after having their bachelor's, and literally being unable to take advantage of any of them. No, she had job offers she couldn't accept. She wanted to go to grad school but wouldn't be let in on the basis of her status. They asked for documentation she couldn't produce. And it was torturous for me to see her go through that, because I watched her work so hard to go through college. And that isn't the sad part for me. She spent so much of her time studying and helping me in my studies. And for her to go through all of that, and for me, from my perspective, not to get to deserve to go farther was heartbreaking. But that didn't stop her either. How many of you here can think of something that you love so much, you'd be willing to do it for free? And not just for free, but for an indefinite period of time with unpredictable, grueling hours. My sister did that for 4 years. She found work on OU's research campus, working in multiple labs in anthropology and genetics. Every day for 4 years, she did volunteer research work, made discoveries, and couldn't publish because of her status, couldn't take job offers because of her status, but kept at it every single day of those 4 years. Until eventually, a couple years ago, there was one small breakthrough for people like my sister. It came from President Obama. It's called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And because of that, she's now enrolled back at OU, formally again, getting her PhD in microbiology. I can't help but have this goofy smile on my face, because I am so proud of her, and I can't get the smile off my face because she's in the audience right now, and I know she's looking at me. And she's probably has the same goofy smile on her face. And I realized growing up, though, with my peers in my high school, with a lot of other immigrants, something very, very concerning to me, that even the experiences of my family, my parents, my sister, and myself, even those experiences are relatively successful stories compared to what's happening to a lot of other youth around the country. And one useful way to wrap your head around what's going on here is this number. There's about 65,000 undocumented immigrant youth that graduate from high school every year. 65,000. And of that 65,000, only 7.5% make it to college. That's less than 5,000 across the entire country. What is happening to those 92.5% that aren't able to take advantage of college? That question is the subject of my thesis that I started last semester. How can we help these youth that are falling through the cracks after high school? And how can we help them finish if they aren't? How can we use local solutions from the government, state or local, whatever it is, in lieu of federal immigration reform, which now seems so elusive? So I undertook field research to answer these questions, because the information, of course, doesn't exist. I've talked to school counselors, principals, EL counselors, teachers, the students themselves, the families, church leaders, community organizers, anybody that will talk to me to find out what has happened to these kids and how can we help them? What is preventing them from going to college or getting gainful employment when opportunities like DACA exist now? And I can confirm what we already knew. A lot of these kids were becoming illegally employed and exploited, and they fell into the cycle they couldn't get out of. I learned that some of these kids were getting detained and deported. Some were voluntarily dropping out and leaving, and we lost track of them. And there's a fourth segment population that is particularly interesting to me, in fact, shocking. This fourth segment, a very small fraction of these youth, are falling victim to criminal activity because of gang violence. They're being preyed upon by gang leaders who go out, identify these youth, and say, we'll protect you from law enforcement, from deportation proceedings. They can't say no, because now that they've witnessed and been a part of criminal activity, they can't report those crimes because of their own status, so they're locked in now. Those are the types of things affecting undocumented youth as they go through high school. And I heard a range of other stories where youth would actually come home after school. They'd come in the living room and actually watch Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, detain their parents in front of them and drag them out of the house. Those are the types of lives these youth lead without opportunities after high school. There was one story in particular, though, that came up that really helps bring home the struggle, the representative struggle of these undocumented immigrants as they go through high school. But this experience particularly of this student I'm about to tell you about is stunning because it really brings to light the way in which we can actually use local solutions to meet the needs of these kids right now, today, actually. The student's name is Daisy Escalera. She came here from Mexico with her family when she was very young. She was 6. And she lived in fear like we all did, wondering how she was going to get out of high school and then pursue her dreams of going to college and having a good job. And in high school, she had a multitude of other pressures affecting her. Some of the family members were telling her to drop out of school. You're not going to get to use your diploma anyway. Just drop out and just work for the family. Help reduce the expenses. Do what you can right now to help us because we don't know what you're going to be able to do throughout high school or after you graduate. So just drop that, forget your dreams. And Daisy took a stand and said no. And Daisy's mom encouraged her and said, no, you're not going to do that. We are going to get through high school. We're going to go to college. We're going to make this dream work. We don't have a plan, but we will get one. So Daisy buckled down and studied hard every single year of high school until eventually she got to senior year. And she knew that she didn't have a plan, but she had to talk to somebody. But this was really difficult for her, not just for her, but other undocumented students, because when she told me all this information, she said, I didn't know how to talk to counselors about this problem, how to tell my teachers that I wasn't sure how to get to college. How am I going to talk about my status when they could reject me, or worse, use the information against me? What if this wasn't a friendly system? What if they found out about my parents and my other family members and myself, and something happened to us? So I didn't know who to tell, she said. Daisy finally heard about one specific person at OSU OKC, a recruiter who had been known to work with these types of issues before. So she went to his office at OSU OKC, sat across from him in his office, sat down, and for the first time in her entire life, said the words out loud, I am undocumented, but I really want to go to college. I'm not sure how to do it. The recruiter smiled, looked back at her, and said, that's fine. It's okay that you're undocumented. You don't have to have a social security number to go to college. You don't have to have all these different papers or work orders. In fact, there are financial aid options designed for undocumented youth. And Daisy was so ecstatic, she started crying, that her work wasn't for nothing, that she could actually realize her dreams of doing something with her passion in her life after high school. But she was crying for another reason. She was frustrated. Why didn't anybody tell me about this before, Daisy said. Why didn't anybody have these conversations with us at my school? No counselor brought this up. This wasn't something we had ever known of. But something else occurred to her too. Maybe I can realize my bigger dream if I got a yes here. Maybe I can go to my dream school. My dream school is here, the University of Oklahoma. So she came to campus, she talked to a recruiter, and replicated the experiment, and got the exact same answer. It's okay that you're undocumented, the recruiter said to Daisy. You don't have to have a social. And in fact, there are financial aid options available for people exactly like you. Foundations, in fact, designed for undocumented youth. And Daisy, again, was so happy. Her true dream of going to her absolute favorite school in the state, OU. But not only that, she was again saddened and deeply frustrated. Why again had this never come up before as a viable option for immigrant youth among her classroom peers? And it made me realize that this was a very representative struggle of undocumented youth who are more than capable, competent, driven to get through high school, but not really sure what to do after themselves when they get their diploma. And the reason I knew that this was a representative struggle is because I also found it in their conversation. We went to the same high school. We were just 2 years apart. So Daisy enrolled at OU and eventually became Miss Hispanic OU a couple years ago. And she used the power of that crown to engage the Hispanic and Latino community and educate the parents, educate the families about their educational options to make sure these kids won't fall through the cracks. And now today is employed by the Oklahoma City Public School District as an ELL parent and community specialist, working on this exact issue. And I confirm what she told me by talking to the counselors myself. I asked them, are you talking about these options that exist for students to still go to school regardless of their status? Are these financial aid options designed for undocumented students? Of DACA, which allows you to get a driver's license and a work permit if you need to? And the counselors, they looked at me and they said, what's that? What's DACA? DACA is an executive order passed by the president. It was all over the news, and they're not talking about it in these schools. These financial aid options designed for undocumented youth is a key to their future, and they don't know that they exist. And the reason this is actually great news is because that means this problem that we have with these kids falling through the cracks is avoidable. That the answers already exist, but for whatever reason, they're not being channeled in the school districts. So what we have here are we have agencies, institutions, resources, people, human capital, willing and able to help the people here in demonstrable need in the school districts. The students needing to do something, have an opportunity after high school. But in the middle, there wasn't a bridge connecting the two. So with this information, I went to the Oklahoma American Civil Liberties Union because I'd worked with them before in the Immigrants Rights Project. And I said, is there a way to build this bridge? A program we can build to educate counselors and teachers, to let them know how to pass on the information, to hold DACA clinics in the schools, to host informational sessions on college and financial aid options. And the ACLU looked at me, the executive director rather, he looked at me and he said, maybe, Akash, if you want to put together a proposal and send it to the national office and get grant funding, we'll hire you to direct this program to make sure that these programs and these resources are getting to the school districts where they belong. And at first I didn't know what to say. The fact that I could even have this much responsibility, that I could be tasked with making sure these kids won't fall through the cracks, was overwhelming. I wasn't sure if I could ever do anything like that. But then something else occurred to me. The fact that this is even an option, that I could actually have an impact in these people's lives regardless of what Congress is unable to do. That I didn't have to wait on the government to do something about it. And that is the best part of this whole project that started as my thesis, is that we don't have to wait on the government to fix the problem. That there are ways to dig our heels in, get involved in the community, and build bridges between society's needs where we find them and the existing solutions where they may exist. OU's motto is for the citizen and for the state. And it is that spirit, throughout all my classroom experiences, that's taught me one thing. And it's that each of us, every single one of us, has a civic existence, a unique but very, very powerful way of engaging with the community and solving a problem when the government or legislature can't. And I can't emphasize this enough because it is exactly what we've been talking about all day at TED. All these other speakers talking about bridges they've built between identified problems that they perceive in society and the existing solutions from other stakeholders who are already interested but weren't connected to the problem. And this is a great problem to have because it means it's avoidable. It means we have power, that we can take control of what's happening right in front of us. If we more actively take power of that ownership to solve some of these problems we have identified, people wouldn't have to live in the shadows. We wouldn't have to live in fear. And the bridges we could build could span the world. Thank you.